hell are you doing? Have you lost your mind? Help me, Jim. Take me home. Bones we are.
Back in February 2022, Paramount made a lot of fans excited by announcing that Star Trek IV was officially in development again. It was supposed to be the final chapter for the crew of the Kelvin timeline, centered around Captain Kirk. But since that announcement, the project has hit more roadblocks than warp speed jumps. Directors have come and gone, and Star Trek IV has mostly just been stuck in limbo ever since. One of the most notable directors attached was Matt Shakman, who had just come off the huge success of WandaVision for Disney+. He was all set to direct Star Trek IV in 2022, and for a brief moment, it really looked like the movie was gaining momentum. According to a recent Variety interview, Shakman explained they were already building sets, hiring a crew, and getting things moving. But around the same time, Marvel approached him about helming Fantastic Four, and once that opportunity was on the table, everything started shifting. Shakman said things on the Star Trek IV side changed dramatically by the end of that summer. The sets were taken down, the crew was dismissed, and the whole project lost its footing. So while Marvel was gearing up to welcome him in, Star Trek IV was quietly falling apart behind the scenes. Even though Shakman didn't get into the specifics of what his version of the film might have looked like, he did say the core story idea is probably still intact. He hopes someone eventually gets to make it. That said, in the film industry, hope doesn't always mean much, especially when it comes to projects stuck in development for this long. As of now, the most recent solid update we've gotten is that Steve Yockey, who's worked on The Flight Attendant and Dead Boy Detectives, was hired as the new writer for Star Trek IV in March 2024. But aside from that announcement, things have stayed pretty quiet. Before that, there was a different plan for the movie entirely. Originally, Star Trek IV was going to be a time travel story where Chris Hemsworth would return as George Kirk, Jim Kirk's father. That idea got shelved back in 2018 after reports of contract and pay disputes. Then, in 2022, J.J. Abrams re-announced the project and said the original Beyond cast would be coming back, even though reportedly none of the actors were actually informed beforehand. Shakman isn't the only one hoping this movie finally happens. Zoe Saldana, who plays Uhura, spoke to Deadline in late 2024 and said she wishes they could have gotten the movie made already. She joked that the cast has aged quite a bit, and if they're going to play these characters again, it better happen soon. She also said she'd love to explore what happens next between Uhura and Spock, both in their working relationship and personal connection. That emotional thread between them was always there, so continuing it would make a lot of sense. Chris Pine, who plays Captain Kirk, has also shared his own frustrations. In an interview with Business Insider, he talked about how confusing the situation has been. When he heard about the new writer being brought on, he was surprised because he thought a script already existed. Apparently, that wasn't the case, or they just decided to change direction again. His attitude seems to be wait and see, which kind of sums up the entire Star Trek IV saga at this point. So why is it so hard to get this movie off the ground? Well, after Star Trek Beyond came out in 2016, the franchise actually found a new rhythm, just not in theaters. Instead of movies, Paramount leaned heavily into television. Starting with Star Trek Discovery in 2017, we saw a wave of new shows like Picard, Lower Decks, and Strange New Worlds. There's even a new show called Starfleet Academy on the way, spun off from Discovery. Because of all that, it seems like Paramount has chosen to invest more in Star Trek's small screen presence, especially since Beyond didn't perform all that well financially. It made $344 million on a budget of about $185 million. Now that's not terrible, but it wasn't the hit they were hoping for. Even though a new Star Trek movie was announced in early 2024, supposedly about the origins of the franchise, we haven't heard anything else about it since. Still, with all the buzz and storytelling happening on TV, this would be the perfect time to wrap up the Kelvin timeline properly. Giving that cast one final mission, Kirk, Spock, Uhura, Sulu, Scotty, and Bones, just makes sense. But the movie isn't on Paramount's current theatrical schedule, which makes things a little uncertain. Now that's a shame, especially considering Zoe Saldana just won an Oscar. Her win for Best Supporting Actress in Emilia Perez adds even more credibility to the cast of Star Trek IV. This group of actors was already impressive. Chris Pine's version of Kirk managed to honor both William Shatner's legacy and bring something new to the role. Zachary Quinto did the same with Spock. And Saldana's portrayal of Uhura stood out right from the first movie in 2009. That year was huge for her. She also starred in Avatar. But honestly, 2025 might be even bigger, now that she has an Oscar under her belt. She's not the first Star Trek actor to win one. Michelle Yeoh won Best Actress in 2023 for Everything Everywhere All at Once, and that helped propel her into a starring role in Star Trek Section 31. So there's a strong case for Star Trek IV to be Saldana's post-Oscar return to the franchise. And if that happens, it's only fair that Uhura finally be treated as a central character alongside Kirk, Spock, and McCoy. In the past 3 films, she's had decent screen time, but not as much focus as the others. Now that she's got an Oscar, it's hard to justify giving her a background role again. Uhura has always been an important figure in Star Trek. In the original series, she broke ground as one of the first black women in a major TV role. And in Strange New Worlds, Celia Rose Gooding's version of the character is just as crucial to the story. So bringing Kelvin Uhura into the spotlight wouldn't just be about awards, it would be a meaningful continuation of her journey. But where does Star Trek IV actually stand right now? As of 2025, it's still in a sort of production purgatory. People involved in the earlier movies clearly want it to happen, but there's no official word from Paramount that it's been greenlit. We know it's passed through multiple writers and directors over the years, but nothing's really stuck. It's been described as the final chapter of the Kelvin timeline, but getting it to the finish line has been a struggle. Since Star Trek Beyond came out almost a decade ago, the cast has obviously aged, and that's something the writers would need to factor into the story. At one point, there was even talk of doing a time travel plot that would bring back Chris Hemsworth as George Kirk, but that idea also faded away. On top of all that, Saldana's Oscar win, while great for her, could actually make Star Trek IV harder to pull off. She's been in high demand for a while already, thanks to her role as Gamora in the Guardians of the Galaxy series, and of course, her ongoing work in the Avatar franchise. There are still Avatar movies planned through 2031. Winning an Oscar only adds to her appeal for other high-profile projects. So even if she's open to returning as Uhura, it might come down to a tough decision between a fresh, exciting new role or jumping back into a franchise that's been stuck for years. And let's be honest, Star Trek IV is long past the point where it would have had peak momentum. Still, doing it without Uhura just wouldn't feel right. She's too essential to the crew and the legacy of the series. Recasting her might be possible, but it's not exactly a popular option. There's also the question of what kind of role she'd even have if the movie happens. If it's another story where she plays second fiddle to Kirk and Spock, it might not be all that appealing to her. And frankly, after an Oscar win, she deserves better than a supporting role. In the end, Star Trek IV could still happen, but it's got a lot working against it. Between the cast's busy schedules, changing creative teams, shifting studio priorities, and a decade-long gap, it's a project with a ton of baggage. But there's still a lot of love for this version of the crew, and if Paramount can pull everything together, there's a chance the Kelvin timeline could finally get the send-off it deserves. And that's that for today's video. Thanks for watching, and we will see you in the next one.